welcome back to the Generational Rundown, everyone. And this is our second guest of our topic this month, dealing with mental health and, what allows people to reach their goals and be the best they can be. So today's guest is somebody I'm really excited to have on. His name is Dennis Andes. And do I say it right? Andes? Andes?
There's an R in there. It's Andres or
Andres. Sorry about that. And I can't even read my own handwriting, but that's okay. Dennis Andres, known as AKA Mr. Sedona. And the way I met Dennis was I had signed up for a tour with my other daughter, Olivia. We were visiting Sedona for a girls' trip, and we wanted to go on a hiking tour. I ironically was not supposed to get Dennis, but because of the snowstorm that, thank God, came down, we ended up having Dennis because he was not supposed to be there. He took over for somebody else that was stranded. So what I wanted to do, Dennis, is really get a sense for the viewers of who you are and how you became Mr. Sedona, a little bit about your background and what your career path was and how you kind of bridged the gap into Mr. Sedona.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to talk about health in all its varieties, but certainly physical health is something I'm very focused on. My background is a long story, so I'll try to abbreviate it. Some of it will come up, I'm sure, as we speak further, as it's relevant. But essentially, I grew up in New York and New Jersey, and I had no connection to nature and the outdoors whatsoever. The only things I remember about nature were how afraid of it everyone seemed to be, and my mother once saying that if I saw any nature in the house, I should step on it and kill it. So I had no connection to nature, honestly, and I knew it was there. I didn't really understand why people would spend time in it. And the only people that did seemed strange. They seemed, at that time in our culture, they were outdoorsmen would occasionally show up on talk shows as if they were aliens from another planet. And so there'd be a lot of jokes made about them. What shifted in my life is that when I was 21, I did volunteer work in Peru. And living abroad, I noticed how much more often people would spend time in nature. The particular incident that shifted my life was that towards the end of that year, my mother came to visit me. She told me she wanted to go see Machu Picchu, which was just starting to show up in the news in America in those days. My mother wanted to have a spiritual experience. I didn't. I just wanted to see the place. Unfortunately, I had the spiritual experience and she didn't. So she was jealous and I was confused. What came out of that, obviously, it was a spiritual experience more than a physical one. But I do recall making a wish in that moment. I felt so good there that I thought, this is what I want my life to be like. I want adventures in places of natural beauty. And this was reinforced in other ways in my life. I've lived abroad quite a lot, actually. When I was 30, however, I discovered and moved to Sedona, and I've been an outdoor guide ever since. And maybe the last bit just to mention is that it really was quite a radical shift. I had a lot of education, a lot of fancy degrees that would have led me towards, I don't know, being a lawyer, being a financial consultant. I worked for the World Bank in Kazakhstan. I worked for another bank in Czechoslovakia when there was one. I spent a lot of time in a lot of wonderful places. So I didn't think I was lost. I thought I was on a career path, but a shift happened in my life when I moved to Sedona that was not unlike what happened to me in Peru. And after moving here, having no idea what kind of job I could have in a town with about 5,000 to 10,000 people. Over time, it became clear that as I spent more and more time in nature, I could actually help other people come into nature. As you know, Debbie, growing up in New York, outdoor guide is not something most guidance counselors suggest as a job opportunity. So I was pretty late at figuring it out, but it really does seem to have fit. And taking people into nature now, as I do in Sedona and a couple other countries around the world, I really get to see and talk to people about physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health. So sorry for the long introduction, but that tells
great.
I got from the middle of Brooklyn to right here in Sedona.
That's incredible. And just to get a sense of your background for the viewers, you have hiked Mount Everest, as you said, Machu Picchu. You've been in safaris in Africa, swimming in Siberia. I mean, wow, when I was reading this, the list goes on and on. But I have to know, what is one of your most memorable travels and why?
Alexandra, it's a great question. Just to pick on, I'm going to say it was the time I out snowboarded an avalanche in Kazakhstan. I was maybe the first person to have a snowboard in Kazakhstan. So going down the ski run, I noticed people staring at me and I thought, hey, I must look really cool. They're obviously think I'm pretty groovy coming down the slopes on this fancy surfboard. But as I went further down the slopes, I noticed people weren't just pointing, they were shouting at me. And the word they were shouting at me was lavina, which was not one of the words in Russian or Kazakh that I knew. And today I can tell you that it's the word for avalanche because there was an avalanche following me down the hill. I was the only one on the slopes, and luckily I survived.
Oh my gosh, that is a wild experience.
Really, I've had so many wonderful experiences in nature, and to tell you the truth, that one is very dramatic, but so many others that are memorable don't always sound great at stories because they're just moments where you see a creature, you see wildlife that looks you in the eyes, that maybe you only see it for a second. I remember seeing a silver fox in Sedona. I probably saw it for 3 seconds. I've never forgotten it since then. But these experiences that happen with nature really do have a big positive impact on people.
I was going to ask you, how has it changed your mental health and how you look at life with the career change from business to the whole nature aspect?
You know, there's so many good things that happen when we walk in nature. And in fact, for people really interested in their physical health, I think one thing that they tend to leave out is the nature part of it. After doing many years of research, so obviously to answer your question, it had a wonderful impact on me. It made me a more peaceful person. It made me a more happy person. I noticed I had a lot less anxiety. Nature, here's one that might surprise you. We live in a society where people are absolutely obsessed with thinking about money, even if they don't want to. It's all over us. It's hard to get out of range of a commercial at any time. When you go in nature, there's no money there. There's nothing, there's no billboards advertising this trail. There's no animals wearing jerseys with a logo of a brand. You get peace, freedom, you get an escape from modern society, and having that time away from thinking about money, obviously also from technology, which I'm a big fan of, but in the right quantity. Being out in nature is another way that we get to reset. It's the spa experience at no charge.
That's a really good way of looking at it, because you're right, especially in the Northeast, when we're near New York City, everything is, you don't have time to slow down. Not only is it money, but it's hectic lifestyle. There's no peace in that commute to Manhattan to go to that, that stressful job. Whereas when you're in nature, it's just more of a physicality where your body is just slowing down and just absorbing everything. And that brings me to my next question. How do you help somebody who is stuck that would like to, open up into nature or try something different and they're not happy? Maybe it's not nature. Maybe they want to make a career change, but they just feel stuck. How do you suggest they do that if there's, not able to the tools?
My goodness, that's such a great question. If it's okay with you, I want to back
like daughter.
I want to back up for a second because I really want to dwell on that one. I would like to share one other element of nature that's often not appreciated. Then I'll talk about how being physical and getting into nature can get people unstuck. We know that men and women have different impressions of nature. And typically, women and men have different fears of nature. And I say this because Sedona is totally run by women. And frankly, I couldn't be happier about it. It's named for a woman. Most residents are female. Most visitors are female too. So I've had the experience of taking out a lot of women individually or in groups, as I did with you and your daughter, Olivia. And one of the things we know from research done at a university in Prescott, which is about an hour away from here, is that one of the particularly positive benefits of nature accrues to women more than men, and that is self-image. So you, not me, are the experts on this, but we don't have to go into great detail for women to understand what a problem it is in this society and how much stress is created by people having a poor self-image and a lot of critical thinking about how they look. So it helps men too, but it seems to help women about 3 times as much to feel less anxiety, less stress, and fewer self-critical thoughts about themselves and their appearance when they step into nature. So I can go on to stuck, but I just wanted to pause and see if
that is such, it 100% resonates, because even for me, I'm an entertainment reporter. So I'm in front of the camera. I'm also in front of a computer all day writing. And so on my lunch break every day, I go for a walk outside for an hour because I'm like, I just need the fresh air. I need the sunlight, and it rejuvenates me. And you're right, putting the phone down and disconnecting from Instagram, which doesn't help anyone's self-image. It's so nice to be outside. And, you know, I was just thinking about it because I am in like a suburb. So I'm walking neighborhoods, but I love the fresh air. But I do feel an even deeper sense when I'm hiking in Malibu, or if I'm actually in the woods. But nature in general isn't just, you know, in the woods. You can do it anywhere outside, which I think some people are like, oh, but I don't live near, you know, a hiking spot, or I am in a city. But literally being outside can help so much, like you said, with disconnecting and self-image. And we do this workout class with Brooke Burke, and she always does it outside in her backyard. And we're grounding and we're in the grass, and it's women of all ages. And it just makes everyone so much happier, so much less anxiety. Everyone says afterwards they feel like free and grounded, and just the serotonin, what is it? Like the endorphins, all of it.
Yes, that's right. They're all those hormones are moving. And just to amplify what you're saying, because I want to give you a big amen on that. The evidence on nature is so powerful that we know that even if you can't get into wilderness, let's say, right? Nature where there's nothing else around, we know that even looking at greenery has been proven to have a positive impact on the brain. A study done showed 3rd graders in a Michigan school, half of whom were on one side of the building with a wall, the other half on the side of the building with a window. 20% better test grades for one class than the other throughout the whole year. It's the only difference is they had access to looking at nature. Another study done by a professor at the University of Michigan of a hospital in Pennsylvania showed a similar kind of thing. People who got a very painful liver surgery with a long recovery time. On one floor of a hospital in Pennsylvania, half with a wall, half with a view of nature. Those patients on the nature side recovered approximately 40% more quickly. They called on nurses asking for pain medication less than 1/3 as often. Just so many physiological benefits. There's literally no other difference except they could look out onto nature. Simply holding a postcard or having a postcard or a plant at your desk is a small way to start, and it's enough to have a measurable physiological benefit. And lastly, sorry for over talking, but that's going here.
No, we love it. We love it. We love it.
So the other is how much time does it take, right? And so I'm always reminded about the joke about, 20-minute abs. Here's my video for 10-minute abs. Here's 6-minute abs. we know that we're unable to measure the smallest amount of nature time that will make a difference. In other words, 2 minutes in nature makes a measurable difference. Obviously, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 days, 2 weeks, it just gets better and better. But that's a strange thing about the science is we can't tell how little, what the minimum dose is, because any dose at all seems to be powerful.
Wow.
That's really interesting. And it's funny because, you know, if somebody's, I think we also talked about being stuck. So if the person is stuck and they need to go to the next level, what type of like tools do you think they need to get out of that mindset? Do you think, even if it has nothing to be having to do with being a walking guide or somebody in nature, nature might be a good bridge to get their clarity, to get them to that next level of thinking, to then pursue what they want? That's where I
love your intuition on that. Let's talk about what it means to be stuck. When someone, we all sort of understand what it means, but how I defined it is 3 particular ways that someone's stuck. First of all, they're stuck in their thinking. Usually they've got negative thoughts that they're believing is true, that they don't know how to undo. The second is they're stuck with their emotions. They've got some emotions they've been holding down. They don't know how to access, express, and so instead they're repressing them. And the third thing associated with being stuck is that they're physically stuck in one place. Now, you're both fit, you're both athletic, so you understand how great it feels when you stretch.
Yes.
It literally has a physiological reaction. For me, I know it shifts my emotions and my thinking as well. So why nature is wonderful is it's a place you can move. It's a place you can express. Now, I understand this is going to sound weird, but remember that our ancient ancestors lived in nature all day long. And so there were no social barriers to feeling their feelings. If they needed to scream, they were going to scream. If they needed to cry, they were going to cry with gusto and enthusiasm. And so often, particularly in the United States today, we feel restricted either because we've got roommates or a spouse or a family around that we don't feel comfortable to feel the feelings in front of. And what that leads to is we often look to entertainment. And this is not a bad thing, but we seek entertainment that's going to move us emotionally, right?
Right.
And sometimes it works to see a movie that's going to help you have a good cry. You just feel better afterwards. But back to the part of your question, which is how can someone get unstuck with their career or the life? I look at those 3 particular ways. Move your body, move your emotions, or shift your thinking. These are the things I do with people when I take them outside. And natural beauty seems to help people feel like they're in a cocoon where each of those things are safe. They don't judge themselves physically. They don't feel like I have to look like other people in the gym. They don't judge themselves emotionally. They know that the deer and the birds are not going to judge them. And they tend to be kinder to themselves about their thoughts.
Yeah. It's interesting because you have me thinking about during COVID, I feel like it was a pivotal point in my life. So I live in a beautiful area in Connecticut where we're on over 2.5 acres, and my screen and porch, which I'm sitting in now, backs up to this beautiful like backyard that's all woods. It's not owned by me, so nobody could ever build. So what was interesting to me is when I was growing up, my mom still lives there. I grew up on a golf course, and that to me was it sounds weird, Dennis, but it was a different type of trees, right? It was more of, my parents had a beautiful backyard with a pool, but then you backed up to a golf course, which was like more or less not the woods. It was more open space. So when I got married, I moved to a place that didn't have that. And it was more like what I was used to. And then we moved several years later to this area in Connecticut, which at first I had a very hard time adapting to because I am surrounded. It's like I'm in a treehouse. My screen and porch is up high, and I look out into these beautiful woods where I see deer, on a daily basis. So I literally became obsessed and like kind of connected to the nature more when COVID hit, because when COVID hit, everybody, right, was seeking to get out of the city, seeking to get to get out and walk. There was nothing else to do. Everything was shut down. So I started to realize, oh my gosh, I am so blessed and lucky to be living not only in a beautiful neighborhood where I can walk for 45 minutes, where I have ponds on my street, but I have a beautiful, not a backyard that you can run in, but a backyard that you can look out and have peace in nature. And that was pivotal for me. That's where I've really, right, Alexandra, I've really gained like a love for this nature, more so than in the past. I always was active. I always worked out. I always went to the gym. I was an ice skater. I've always been fit, but I never walked so much as to when COVID hit. Once COVID hit, I started my big journey of walking. And even right now, I'm doing my interview with you. I'm looking out into this really peaceful serenity outside. Number one, the temperature is good. When it's too cold, I can't be out here. And number two, everything's in bloom. So it's miraculous to see whenever April is, I'm always so excited for the May. And in the month leading up, everything starts to fill in. And it's just like incredible. So I've really learned to appreciate that much more.
It's a real gift to live in a beautiful place or to have access to beauty. And when I say gift, I don't mean it just as a metaphor. People who tend to live close to natural beauty tend to have better economic outcomes. They have higher educational intelligence scores. They have less crime and violence in their lives. Now, yes, you could say, well, Dennis, that's wealthy people choosing to buy in those places, but not always. Not everyone that lives someplace close to nature does so because of wealth, and yet they still have these wonderful outcomes. So I'm so pleased that you've recognized that. We need a word other than addiction or obsession because we're talking about something positive.
Right.
And you were feeling it too, Alexandra, each time you're out there with Brooke. Our ancestors lived for hundreds of generations in nature. Living out of nature is really the weird thing. And our brains are so evolved to respond to nature that scientists doing MRIs or fMRIs, which basically MRIs on the brain, kept trying to see what it was about nature that made brain response so good. And after testing hundreds of subjects over hundreds of hours with hundreds of different settings, they finally realized it's not nature. Nature is the baseline. It's modern living that's the problem. When you show a brain buildings, even lovely buildings, the brain response goes down. Now, I'm a fan of architecture. I love beautiful buildings, but I can tell you that living in urban settings, and to a certain extent, even in suburban settings, isn't doing as much for the brain as going into nature. I have good news, and that is you don't need a lot of nature to get back to the baseline.
Yeah.
It's a natural rejuvenator. And the term I use to explain this, and I'll wrap this up, but because I know you have more questions. I'm sorry for long answers.
Oh, I love it. You're giving us so much good knowledge. I'm like, I just want you to keep talking. This is great.
Yeah, and the viewers too. It's great.
You know, so we've had a lot of great research on exercise forever, since at least the 1950s. We know exercise is good for you, right? Anytime you hear a story, they say, well, diet and exercise, right? Who doesn't know diet and exercise matter? So we've got lots of research, especially on the exercise point. And basically the gist of the exercise research is we need some. You should be moving. And generally, the more you move, the better, as long as you don't injure yourself. What we didn't have a lot of research on was nature. Why? Because nature's hard to measure. It's not in a laboratory with 4 walls. And it used to be that the machinery to measure the benefits of nature on humans was so big, it wasn't very portable. All of that has changed now with miniaturization over the last 20 years. We've got great results on people walking in a mall versus walking through a forest, running down the street in a city versus running through a park. And of course, you've heard this term popularized in Asia, forest bathing. Both Japan, the Japanese, and the Koreans now have enabled their doctors to literally write people prescriptions to spend time in nature as an antidote for things like depression. So the term that I use is HNS, the human nature synergy. And what I mean by that is being in exercising is good, being in nature is good, but we finally have evidence that shows moving in nature is the best. You get an extra boost, sort of a vitamin N. You get a green benefit from anything you could do indoors or at a gym or on a track. Doing it outdoors adds to the well-being.
So Dennis, what would you say for people who live in places that have really harsh winters? What can you do in that case? Would it just be take a vacation, or would you say actually go outside and enjoy the snow? What would you suggest? How do you get your nature fix in those like dark, depressing months?
I love this question, and I actually brought some show and tell items today, but I'll tell you what I forgot to bring is my snowshoes. Now, I'm leaving in 2 weeks because I'll spend July and August in Argentina, where I'm actually, by choice, leaving the sunshine to go into the snow. So I'd say a couple of things. First of all, just a little anecdote about the importance of being outside in nature. A couple of years ago, I had 2 close female friends. One of them had grown up, both of them were from the Southwest, so they'd grown up in areas of sunshine. And that year, one of them moved to Seattle and the other moved with her fiance to England. And every time I'd check on the girl in England, she was doing fine. She was in Manchester, very gray, rainy part of the country. But when I'd call the girl in Seattle, same kind of weather, she'd be crying. And after months of this, finally I said to my friend in Seattle, I think you've got seasonal affective disorder. Well, she did move, and sure enough, as soon as she moved back to the Southwest, her mood lifted instantly. But my friend in England, Melissa, had never had the problem. So I interviewed her about it, and she said, Dennis, it's funny you say that, because every day my fiance would come home about 4:30, right? Pretty late afternoon, kind of dark and gray, sun's going down soon. And she said he would grab my hand and say, we're going outside. And she'd say, no, it's ugly, it's cold, it's going to rain. He'd say, put on all the clothes you want, we're going outside. There is tremendous light, even on gray days in winter. So we have to get exposure to light in winter. The second thing I would say is do as the Norwegians do. What they taught me is there's no bad weather, there's only bad clothing. Dress appropriately, right, and you really won't notice it. I was not a fan of winter, but my closest buddy who taught me snowshoeing taught me that trick. And so now if I'm, my nose, my fingers are covered, I'm fine. I think the third thing I would say is, obviously, I'm a fan of walking. I'm a fan of hiking. And what is hiking? It's just walking with better scenery. If you learn to start hiking, you can hike outside in winter. You need to have good footwear, right? But you can run, you can trail run, you can snowshoe. All of those things are basically forms of walking outside. And once you do it like any other habit, just for 21 days or so, you'll be completely hooked on it.
Yeah. I mean, that whole seasonal depression thing, I know from social work, that is a real thing, that some people can, because it is. And to me, it's not just the cloudiness. I mean, even for me, I don't get depressed, but it's like when the trees, I have so many trees that I'm looking at right now. When winter comes, all this is open. And you can,
yes, but sorry to interrupt, but you understand that that people are getting, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Disclaimer first. People are getting seasonal affective disorder because they're staying inside.
Oh, got it. Got it. So it's not just by looking out.
One of them didn't get it. She was equally sensitive. She
Right.
didn't get it because she went outside every day. So, but
Right.
yes, it's a real thing. It's very painful. But look at what the remedies are. They're lights that you can buy on
Right.
Amazon that are what? Trying to give you the natural light that you get much more powerfully when you're outdoors. And Alexandra knows this, being in California.
Yeah.
You probably noticed when you moved out there, wow, people seem to be in a good mood. People are friendly, like in the morning. And when I came to Arizona, having grown up in New York, I thought, why are they being so nice to me? What are they trying to get out of me, right?
Right,
And
right.
finally realized I was the one with the problem. That kind of suspicion is inappropriate. So there's always light, even when it's cloudy outside, and people really need it.
That's a really good point. And that sounds like it's really something that, do you feel that it's helped your mental health? Like when you look back, like how you were raised and how you grew up versus how you've lived this part of your life, do you feel your quality of life is just, you have such a better positive outlook on things because of what you're surrounded by? Not just that, I would say not just that it's your career path, but also you wake up in the red, the beautiful red rocks every day. And that just must bring such a joy that it's never going to change. It's always red rocks. You know what I mean? It's not like where I live where the weather's going to fluctuate and change. You might have bad days where it storms or something, but those red rocks are just so exquisite to look at.
The stormy days are the best because in the summer, it won't rain till July or August, but then we get double rainbows. When you get snow on the red rocks, it's divine. So I do think natural beauty is underappreciated. It's one reason why I think we need more women in nature. Women tend to relate to beauty in much more powerful ways than men do. Men tend to think, it's just my opinion, but I think we tend to look at it objectively, and obviously in the negative, sometimes we tend to objectify it, right? We only see it in women, for example. When I speak to women and I ask them to imagine beauty, so Alexandria, if I asked you, what comes to your mind when I say natural beauty, what would you answer?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if this is just the industry I'm in, but I'd say I think about like a really beautiful girl with no makeup on who like looks gorgeous.
Oh my God.
And
Sorry.
Debbie, what would you say if I
I was
asked
going
you
to say
to
green
imagine?
trees. I was just going to say the trees.
Oh,
Yeah. So here's what's wonderful. There's no
oops.
wrong answer, but you both gave me the two most common answers that women offer. Many women, for example, and this won't surprise you, kind of a blend of the two things, will talk about being naked or at least not having anything on them, maybe is a simpler way to say it, in a stream, in a lake, under a waterfall, on a hill. It's a beautiful concept. I wish more men thought of themselves this way, but we need women in nature because we know that the evidence shows women tend to support nature, the rights of the animals, the protection of the environment. But the fact that women tend to have more fears of nature than men keeps more women out of it. So much like athletics, exercise, you've heard weightlifting really helps women even more than men. I actually feel that way about women being out in nature. It takes a little practice. It's natural to be afraid, but it's really not necessary to be afraid. It's really the safest place you can be once you understand the skills of how to find your way.
You know what? I was going to ask you a girl's guide to camping because I think I'd like to go camping. I think a lot of women would like to go camping, but I think a lot of their first reaction is, oh my God, no, because bears and bugs and all of these fears. So what do you say to that? And what are things that they can do to lessen those fears and actually enjoy nature?
So I would say one step at a time. I'm not asking people to go live in the woods forever. I'm not even asking them to spend a night in the woods unless they're comfortable to. I want people just to find the local park to walk and notice over time the positive impact it has on their mood. Notice over time that what's going to happen for people is they're going to start missing it if they don't go.
Right.
And that naturally is going to lead them to want a little more. I was terrified of nature when I first went out in Sedona. I really was. And I was a grown man. I was healthy and fit. And I thought, this is crazy. Why am I so afraid? And I realized it was because I had been hypnotized by society. You know, every night you watch the weather on the news, they're showing you a tornado here, a flood here. They only show nature when it's doing damage to people. They only show us animals in movies when they're killing somebody, which they almost never do. So no, it's unfair. They need a better PR agent. But what happened? Why did I stay in nature? Because I saw this creature with ears that were as big as corn stalks. It was a jackrabbit. I didn't know it was real. I knew about bunny rabbits. I thought jackrabbits were like cartoon characters. They're real. And its ears were so big, I just started chasing it. And of course, I never caught it because they're way faster than we are. But they hop in a way that they let you get close, and they keep going. So you go deeper and deeper. And I just felt this love for nature. I don't think I'm special. I think every one of us as human beings, having 100 generations before us that lived in nature, that depended on nature, we will all feel it again once we get out there and spend some time in it.
It's interesting because this is kind of something I didn't plan to ask, but we have a dog that's 17, our Shih Tzu. And when you're talking about people and nature, my thought goes to my love for my dog, who's part of our family. He is amazing. He's a Shih Tzu. He's 17. He doesn't see well. He barely hears. He has an amazing sense of smell. And what I like to do is even though he doesn't walk that fast, I love to bring him outside for walks or even around our backyard. And he loves to sniff. And I feel like it gives him a purpose when he's indoors all day, because he's funny as a Shih Tzu. If it's rainy, he doesn't always want to go out. But when the weather is mild, he will go out. And I feel that's like giving him a purpose, not just the eating of the food, because he has stopped giving us kisses. He has stopped wagging his tail, but he's not in any pain. He loves his food. He loves nature. And I think often how the nature is something that keeps his longevity, helps to keep my dog, who's 17, like amazing.
And he was like trotting down the driveway. He loves being outside in winter. He lies by the sun, like, the seasonal. He tries to find the sun in the windows, and he'll only lie right there where the sunshine's coming in.
So with animals too, we talk about people often, but I am such a dog and animal advocate. Like, I'm obsessed with that whole part of life, the dogs that are in shelters. And if I'm going on a walk, it's funny, last week I saw a baby and a dog, and I went up to the woman and asked what kind of dog it was. I forgot to say, oh, what a cute baby. And my daughter was like, oh my God, there's a baby. But I'm so like, dogs are so innocent and all. But I think often that my dog, when he seems alive most, is not just when he's eating, but when he's out there sniffing and going, and even with his sight being so.
Yes. I want to say amen to that too. I want to tell you a story from nature of how dogs came to be. Once upon a time, there were no dogs, there were wolves. And wolves would compete with humans for hunting. So deers, antelopes, packs of wolves would try to kill the deer and antelope to survive. And humans would do the same thing. We would hunt. And wolves did something really well. They could smell the animals better than the humans could. And they could chase the animals faster and farther than the humans could. But the humans could do something that wolves couldn't. The humans had spears, knives, rocks that we sharpened to kill the animal during the struggle, during the fight. I'm not promoting hunting. What I'm trying to tell you is that at one point, humans and wolves made a pact. And humans said to the wolves, you guys chase down the animal and trap it, and we will kill it mercifully to put it out of its misery. And we will take the meat to live so that our tribes, our clans, our families can live, but we'll throw you the scraps, we'll throw you the extras. And the wolves were okay with that. So humans and wolves began to live close together. And eventually one day, someone took a young wolf pup into the family. Dogs are pack animals, right? They follow the alpha. So if you have a wolf pack and it sees your face first, Debbie, it's going to assume you're the pack leader and it will be loyal and obedient to you. This is how dogs came to be the friends of humans. It started in nature, and we formed an alliance that has lasted for tens of thousands of years. Your pet wants to be close to nature. And the only way to torture an animal, in my mind, is you don't let it move and you don't let it get into nature once in a while. So I love that you're taking him out there. He can't run anymore, but his sense of smell is amazing. And nature is giving him so many smells that we also benefit from. By the way, lots and lots of benefits. If you spend an hour in nature, we know from what you're breathing, your immunity goes up for the next 24 hours. If you spend a day in nature, your immunity goes up for a weekend. If you spend a weekend in nature, it goes up for a week. And we know it's happening through things that you smell or sniff in nature that you don't really perceive, but you are breathing in, that boosts your immunity. Your dog is more aware of it than you are, and it's absolutely benefiting it. So not only is he enjoying it, it's good for his health.
Yes, I agree. I know, we love him so much. He's just remarkable. And yes, you're right, because like the other senses are going, but the smell is it's so pronounced that he gets enjoyment out of sniffing. And a lot of people, they get very impatient with their young dogs because their dogs are sniffing and they're not going to the bathroom right away, but they're taking in the nature and really enjoying it. And I don't know, just becoming one with it. And I don't realize, but I think that a lot of people don't, like there are people that have dogs that they're just like, they go pee and poo inside, they don't go outside. And I feel like it's just like kind of lazy. I always take my dog for a walk. Even being old, we have a very long driveway. We carry him up the driveway, and then he walks down and he can see, and he can it's just an incredible thing to watch. So I do think that. I don't know if that could be one of your next books, but talking dogs in nature,
I'm not lucky enough to own a dog, and part of the reason why is because I love them so much that I would only have a dog if I could take it outside all day with me. But on our hikes in Sedona, we are dog friendly. And so we do take people out with their dogs, and it's a lot of fun. You got to teach them what a cactus is, but after that.
That is so cute. Well, we've spoken a lot about you living in Sedona, but I think I want to talk about the age-old question, what is a vortex? You wrote a book, What is a Vortex? And it really talks about the energy in Sedona and the magical healing powers that it has. What was researching that book like for you, and how did you see it incorporate just these magical elements? Like, I was reading what it was about. We got it for my dad as well. And I was just blown away. All the powerful, mystical, spiritual energy that people might not realize is right here in Sedona, Arizona. You don't have to leave the country to find it.
It's really true. It was wonderful to research because in effect, I was just taking people walking every day. So the research came naturally. I'd had that first experience the first time I came here of just feeling just a kind of a bliss of being outside that I didn't really have the right words for. I didn't know how to talk about the emotion. I didn't know the word bliss at the time, basically. But looking back, I know that was what I was feeling, and finding on the one hand, so many people living in Sedona who had no reason to live here, people from other countries or other parts of this country who never planned on moving here, but came through Sedona and had an experience like I did. And then on the other hand, meeting tourists who also had unusual experiences here. So it was great to research it. And what I found over time was, even though it doesn't, nothing extraordinary happens to most people, Alexandra, something unusual happens to many people, and they're not making it up. And so I began looking at what could possibly be what kind of energy this is, and where it could possibly be coming from, what impact it has on people, and finally how we could use it for our own benefit.
Yeah. Do you feel there's any misconceptions people have about Sedona, or tourists come and there's something that you're like, no, you have to do this, and they miss out on an amazing golden opportunity? Is there anything like that?
I think Sedona is a great big giant misconception. Yes. It's completely confusing to people. They think that as far as there being energy, they don't know if they should be afraid of it. They don't know where to go. They think they're supposed to stand in a certain spot to feel it. They're not sure what it's going to do for them. So to give you a brief answer, and I'm happy to answer more questions about it, but essentially, I do believe Sedona is more akin to a sacred site than to a vortex. That's the first problem, by the way. And I did write what is a vortex, because everybody goes, oh, vortex, is that kind of some kind of swirly thing? I don't actually think it was the right word to use. I didn't pick it. But these days, I think of Sedona as a sacred site, a place with spiritual energy, where it isn't so important where you're standing. What's important is the intention that you bring to it.
I love that.
Oh, and I was going to say,
and by the way, I also happen to think it's the best place in America to go for a hike. So people don't have to come on a spiritual pilgrimage. That's what brought that. That's how, that's sort of, I think, the best reason to come Sedona. But even if you come on a spiritual pilgrimage, right, I might lead you in meditation and things like that. I'm still going to take you on a hike, because I think the best way to experience the energy of this place is the nature and is the natural beauty. For a long time, people were like, well, which one is it? Is it a spiritual place or a nature place? I see those two as completely integrated. Many sacred sites around the world are in places of tremendous natural beauty. Some of them are now surrounded by less natural beauty because they were conquered by other civilizations or destroyed. There were so many more sacred sites around the world at one time. The Romans tried to knock down as much of Stonehenge as they could. Machu Picchu, which I was at 2 weeks ago, is there because the Spanish never found it. If the Spanish had found it, they would have taken all the rocks away. They would have taken all the gold away from these places. So the sacred sites tend to be in places of natural beauty. I don't think that's an accident.
And do you have like a memory or a description of somebody you've ever had that's been one of your biggest challenge clients, like that you did a personal hike, maybe you went to another country with, or maybe you just did a day tour? Because I know you do both. You do the day trips, the regular tours daily, as well as these very big excursions. So any fond memory, or
you change someone and make them a believer in nature?
Of course, I have hundreds, if not thousands, of stories. But since we've been talking about making the shift from being in the cities and suburbs to getting more nature time into your life, again, I'm not telling people to move, but incorporating it into a city or suburban lifestyle. I'm reminded of a woman who had grown up in, was it Manhattan or Brooklyn? That I took out a few years ago. Now, of course, I lived in Brooklyn when I was 1 year old, so I'm quite removed from it. I didn't remember the neighborhoods, but this woman was remarkable to me. She coincidentally worked at the same accounting firm that my dad had worked out in Manhattan for many years. And so all she did in her life was she lived in a 2-story home. Her parents lived upstairs. She was in her late 30s, by the way. And all she did every day was get on a bus and go to Manhattan. She had only been out of New York State once on a bus to New Jersey. She didn't know how to drive. She hadn't ever spent any time in nature in her whole life. So when she called me, I don't know what had spurred her interest, but she wanted to hire me to take her out for every day for 2 weeks. And I said, you know, it's really not necessary. Let me take you out for a couple of days and I'll teach you everything you need to know. And if you really want me after that, we can talk about it, but I'm not going to book you for 2 weeks. I'm going to book you for 2 days. On the first day that we went out, you know, I was talking about nature as I do to help her feel comfortable. She was walking right behind me. We were coming into a beautiful red canyon, but with some nice green trees. I was talking about the plants, flowers were popping out. And I noticed that just a few minutes in that she wasn't behind me anymore. And, you know, as a guide, rule number 1 is don't lose the client. So you get that sixth sense, right, of what's behind you. And I turned around and there she was. She wasn't that far back, but she was weeping. I wouldn't just call it crying. She was weeping. And I said to her, is anything wrong? And she said, she put her hands on her heart and she said, it's so beautiful. I never imagined it would be this beautiful.
Wow.
Now, Debbie, you used the word stuck earlier. We were talking about people being stuck. As I got to know this woman better, I found out that she had ended a long-term relationship. I don't have all the details, but I definitely had the sense that there was some abuse that she suffered. She seemed to me a very small person who didn't have much of an identity or self-love. Frankly, I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
We went out a second day. The shift had happened. She didn't need me anymore. I couldn't have been happy. I gave her more recommendations on places to go. That was the first vacation she had taken in her career outside of New York. She came back to Arizona 2 months later, right? So no vacations her whole life. Now she's taken 2 in 2 months. She came back, it was winter. This time she was in the Phoenix area. She applied for a transfer with her company. She moved to the West. She spends every day in nature now. She's in a happy, healthy relationship.
Oh my gosh.
It's you know, how much would you pay for, it's not just, you know, how much you would pay for a workshop that could do that. Think about how many years of therapy somebody would normally need for that. Now, I'm not asking people to give up therapy, but I'm telling you, nature is therapeutic. And for her, just moving in nature did things that were unprecedented in her life. It's very clear to me that Sedona spoke to her in ways that we don't know how to talk about.
Wow, I have goosebumps. That is such an incredible story. I feel like you've helped so many people. This is, like you said, one of thousands of stories, but I got to know, what have you learned about yourself since starting this journey? I'm sure so much, but if you could pick one thing.
Alexandra, your questions are so good. Debbie, did you teach this to her?
No, this is what the reason I laughed in the beginning.
I know. I mean, you have to think about these. So if I were to think, what has changed most about myself, or what have I learned about myself? Is that the question?
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, a lot of answers, but try to give you something concise. And I do actually think a lot of other people, but particularly women, may relate to this. When I was a boy, I was small. I was small. I was also light. I weighed nothing. I set my high school record for push-ups because I was like, I could do this all day. I was so skinny. I was so light. I was also young for my grade. So it was exaggerated. The point is, I didn't grow up with a great opinion about my body. And so I also went to an all-boys high school, which was really tough. To be basically the smallest, lightest person there was not didn't feel great at the time. And when I came to Sedona and started walking, I realized I have a great body for hiking. And over time, I realized, wait a second, everybody's got a great body for hiking. And do you know why? It's because hundreds of thousands of years ago, in fact, more than 1 million years ago, our ancestors in Africa when they came down from the trees, started walking. And scientists have asked themselves, how did humans survive when there were saber-toothed tigers and other creatures with big claws and big teeth? How did humans, not become somebody else's dinner? And we now know it's because humans would get together, the grandparents, the parents, and the kids, to go hunting. And they would follow a wildebeest, let's say. Not for 5 minutes, not for 10 minutes, but for hours. Because if you ask your dog or your favorite pet to go running, it will run and beat you in the first 10 yards or 20 yards, but then it has to stop and pant. Does it make sense what I'm saying, Alexandra?
Yeah.
I promise I'm going to
No,
finish.
I love this. It makes a lot of sense.
It's a better story to tell how I feel. So humans can go 10 or 20 yards and we don't have to stop and pant. It's because we sweat, and four-legged creatures don't. So if you chase a wildebeest, you'll get close to it and it'll run away, and you'll get close to it and it'll run away. You won't catch it because it can outrun you, but it has to stop and pant. And because humans can just keep hiking all day long, we don't have to stop. And eventually in Africa, the wildebeest would fall over and die, and dinner was served. And again, I don't mean to be crude if your audience is not into hunting, but we did need to eat meat at some point to survive. Hiking was how we survived. Walking long distances is how we survived. Eventually, it's how the human species moved out of Africa into the Middle East, across the continents. And so hiking is in our blood. We've got butts. We've got long legs. We've got a neck with a piece that holds our head upright when we're moving forward. Why? They were developed, gorillas don't, apes don't. They were developed through evolution so that we could walk. And what I learned about myself is I have the perfect body for walking, and so do you.
I love that. I love that. Do you like running? Because I don't personally love running, but I love walking and I love hiking.
Read my mind. I was going to ask him about that because I was going to say, I had a thought when he was talking that specifically when you're walking, you're slowing and you're absorbing. Even if you're hiking, you can, but when you're running, you kind of bypass the enjoyment of what's around you because you're just running.
I believe that humans were built to run occasionally. I think that most people who jog regularly wind up getting injured.
Right.
I love running on a trail occasionally, like chasing a jackrabbit, which still have never caught one. I never will. But man, is it fun.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure that our body was developed to be able to run for short periods of time, but really to walk at great length. And you have to tell me how we're doing on time, but for people that want to take their walking game up a level, I want to suggest a couple things. You can start walking faster. You can also add more hills to your walking if you're in a place like that. But I want to turn you on to a new sport that's starting to grow that even in trend-setting Hollywood, I bet you haven't heard about yet. It's called rucking.
No.
Have you heard about this, Alexandra? So let me show you what I mean. So I've got something here. This is made, I'm not a sponsor or connected to the company, but the brand name is Go Ruck. Rucking is hiking with weight on your back. And it's the name that military, soldiers, armies all around the world for thousands of years have called it because soldiers always march to war with stuff on their back. And I want to mention it particularly for women because it turns hiking into something that's good aerobically into something that's always good for building muscle mass. So I wear it on my back like this. And and by the way, you don't have to buy one. I love it because it's well sewn and because I carry weight. But you could carry a Ziploc bag of sand. You could carry a dumbbell if you have one. Just put it in your backpack. That's fine too. With a true rucking pack like this, what you do is you got a pack. It has a Velcro front here. as you can hear, and I take weights of different sizes. So this is a 20-pound weight that I stick in. I usually ruck with 30 pounds now.
Oh,
It's
wow.
right in, and it's got a strap in the front. I think this is more comfortable for most people than wearing a weight vest in the front.
I was going to say, I have a weighted vest of 5 pounds, but I mean, this seems way better. I like, you know, you can't go up from 5 pounds. It's kind of light now.
Yeah, I find that when they're in the front, it kind of curls your shoulder, and this sits back, and it's good for your posture as well. So people are still looking at me a little weird, but I know pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America, but I think rucking is going to be too.
So where can you get do you just get those online at goruck.com or something? Where can the viewers find that?
Absolutely. GoRuck.com. They're based in Florida. It was started by an Army Ranger. I love the results I'm seeing with people, both men and women. But really, even just if you think about the difference between walking down your block versus going for a hike in nature, probably for many people, besides the fact that there's more beauty in nature, the other difference is you're probably going to carry something. You're going to carry some water, bring some snacks, first aid, maybe things like, you know, suntan lotion. So hiking is sort of rucking, but if you want to take it up to another level, that's another way to do it. I also like doing it because I guide in places around the world where sometimes I'm carrying a heavy pack, and I definitely noticed that it's been good for muscle mass development. What we know now for longevity is people need, scientists say 2 things, I say 3 things. First, you need to develop your VO2 max, your ability to take in oxygen. This has to do with aerobic training. The second is you've got to have muscle mass. Muscle mass is highly correlated in men and women with longevity. So whether it's weightlifting or any kind of weight resistance, it's important if you want to live longer. The third thing that I think works is doing either the first 2 or something else in nature. A connection to nature builds your immunity. It improves your eyesight. It's good for mood. It's great for your brain waves, on and on and on. It's great for weight loss. So I think nature is the third piece of that puzzle. VO2, muscle mass, and nature. That's how people live long and they live happy.
It's so true. Oh gosh, it's so true. Dennis, before we let you go, I could talk for hours. You are so knowledgeable. What is next for you? What can the viewers expect? Are you going to hike somewhere you've never hiked before? Do we have another book in your future? What can they expect?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm super excited. I'm going to Argentina to do some more research and to write my next book, which will be called Sacred Sedona.
When you were speaking about it earlier, I was like, that would be a great next book because you're, oh my God, wow, that's perfect.
You know, I thought it was only when people were in Sedona that their intuitive gifts rise, but obviously it happens for you, Alexandra, like for your mother when you just think about Sedona.
Oh my gosh.
Happy about that. I hope you'll get to visit. Obviously, Olivia's welcome back too with you, Debbie. It's
oh my gosh, I have to come. No, I'm coming to Sedona and I'm calling you. This is like, I cannot wait. Sounds so magical and so amazing. And where can the viewers find you? Where can they find your services, your books, everything?
I'm pretty much I basically don't exist on social media, except I do have a website. It's DennisAndres.com. Soon, MrSedona.com will be up. Once we're done, I'm sure I'll be calling you to ask which social media platform I should think about getting onto, because I'm pretty terrible at it. But I think Sedona does a great job of speaking for itself, and it's been a real pleasure to talk to both of you today.
Thank you so much, Dennis. This has been amazing. And you got to get that Instagram handle, Mr. Sedona, before anyone else takes it. You got to secure that.
Fantastic. Will do.
Thank you.